Welcome to Vital MTB's 2022 Downhill Bike Test Session. In this video, we will discuss the performance of Canfield's Jedi 29. To read the full review, head to vitalmtb.com. In the world of mountain biking, few brands have built a hardcore cult following in downhill and freeride like Canfield Bikes. With a legacy dating back to the late 90s and the inception of Red Bull Rampage, Canfield's downhill pedigree was built on hard-charging bikes with a reputation for having a smooth and capable suspension design, industrial aesthetic, and bomb-proof durability. When the time came to develop the Jedi 29, Lance Canfield leaned on his years of knowledge from refining the Jedi platform to create a new iteration that would meet the demands of modern downhill riding. With a lot to live up to, the new Jedi 29 carries a torch for its predecessors, boasting a raw and rugged look that makes it uniquely a Canfield. The frame continues to be constructed from 7000 series aluminum, but features an updated layout of Canfield's signature Formula 1 suspension design. The high pivot multi-link design predates the Jedi, and the latest configuration places the shock low in the frame, while the position of the one-piece CNC links have been tweaked to fine-tune suspension kinematics. The leverage curve has been updated, with a higher leverage rate at the beginning of the stroke for improved small bump sensitivity and a more progressive ending stroke for better bottom-out support. Mid-stroke support was also adjusted to create a poppy and responsive ride to counteract the increased wheelbase and size of the 29-inch wheels. Finally, Canfield lowered anti-rise to improve balance and predictability under braking. The standout characteristic of the Formula 1 design is the rearward axle path that grows by 19 mm as the suspension moves through its travel, allowing the rear wheel to move back, up, and out of the way of compressions. This motion helps the Jedi 29 maintain speed through square edge impacts where other designs can feel like the rear wheel is hanging up. A pulley wheel keeps chain growth to less than 1 mm, and suspension feedback is essentially untraceable with the pedals, creating that buttery smooth suspension movement through rough sections that high pivot bikes are renowned for. The placement of the pulley wheel can also be changed to optimize chain management for various cassette sizes, and other frame details include external cable routing, custom removable rear fender, and custom MRP G5 chain guide. Unsurprisingly, the Jedi 29 towers over the 27.5-inch model. Every size has grown substantially, and Canfield aimed for each size to provide similar balance and composure at speed or in the air so that riders receive the same ride experience regardless of their height. We tested a large Jedi 29 with a 475mm reach, 644mm stack height, and 62.5 degree head tube angle. Due to the rearward axle path of the Formula 1 design, the chainstay length is constantly changing, but at sag sits around 443mm. Compared to the other bikes in the test, the Jedi 29 had the tallest stack height, the second longest reach behind the nuke-proof Descent 2.9, and was the only bike without any geometry adjustments. Canfield offers the Jedi 29 as a frame and shock only or as a complete build with options to upgrade the suspension. Builds start at $6,299 and go up depending on the fork and shock chosen. Our Jedi 29 retailed for $6,699 and was highlighted by a Manitou Dorado Expert fork, EXT Arma V3 coil shock, TRP DH7 7-speed drivetrain with Canfield cranks, TRP DH Evo brakes with 203mm rotors, and E13 LG1 Plus DH aluminum wheels with 2.5-inch Maxxis Minion DHF and DHR tire combo. The Jedi 29 had the most eclectic assortment of components out of the 4 bikes tested, sharing only the same E13 wheels as the Mondraker's Summum. So, how did the Jedi perform? In true test session fashion, we wrangled together 3 testers to gain a diverse impression of each bike. We then set up camp at Mountain Creek Bike Park in Vernon, New Jersey. Situated only an hour from New York City, Mountain Creek is best known for its impressive variety of trails and short gondola ride. The mountain offers a mix of rough, technical rock gardens, high-speed chunder, steep rock rolls, and flowy jump trails with ripping berms. With the ability to knock out multiple laps per hour and accommodations conveniently located at the base, Mountain Creek served as the perfect location to test this year's bikes. With a tight timeline to shake down 4 downhill bikes, our goal was to find out where each bike excelled or fell short, what nuances set each apart, and ultimately help riders understand which bike would be best for them.
When I look at the Canfield, it kind of reminds me of like a medieval torture device. It definitely, the aesthetic of it is not sleek and smooth. It seems raw and unrefined. What stood out the most to me is how much attention that bike got cruising around Mountain Creek. People love those bikes. It got a lot of questions. Definitely was a conversation starter in the lift line. On the trail, it actually surprised me how playful the bike was. It definitely comes off as sort of a heavy, just smash into rock bike, but it actually jumped pretty well. The rearward axle path seemed to make the bike not pump as well as the other bikes. I had to really labor on the bike park trails to get the bike to keep up, but once it got momentum, it seemed to roll really well. I was super impressed with the TRP brakes. I'm a Shimano brake guy, and they were the closest in feel. I found that they were comfortable to pull. I like to run my reach in pretty tight because I have small hands, and it didn't give me any weird throw. I'd say the bottom line with that bike is that bike's for someone who likes to smash rocks. It's really comfortable in the rocks, just kind of drop the heels, stay off the brakes, and go. But it actually jumped well enough where you could definitely enjoy bike park runs. In my mind, that's an old school East Coast bike, and I kind of feel like it belongs at Mountain Creek. But overall, I would say it's the amateur racer to the guy that just likes to smash rocks on the weekend. That would be who I'd recommend that bike for.
So the Canfield Jedi 29 was the bike that on Friday when we were still planning to race, I originally chose to be my race bike for the weekend. And a lot of that was based on just when I first sat on the bike and kind of how my personal body geometry fell on the bike. It was super comfortable. Probably one of my favorite descending characteristics of the Jedi was going into one of the numerous rock gardens that are here at Mountain Creek, and that bike I had the easiest time personally being able to pick a line and be able to kind of like preload the suspension and pop through rough terrain. Some of the other bikes were a bit more kind of pick your line and then just hold on, and they would fare well, but you were kind of along for the ride in the lines you were choosing. The Jedi kind of had a little bit more lively demeanor, but still matched with being able to, plow and maintain speed. I've personally never ridden a Dorado fork or an EXT rear suspension, and the performance of them was good, but I would also need more time to further my setup, become more familiar with both components, and I think that probably would be a similar situation for a lot of consumers that would get the bike. It just takes a lot more kind of knowledge of the suspension to understand when you're feeling a certain sensation and how to adjust correctly for what you're going for. I've never ridden a Dorado, but I've always been kind of led to believe that they have more flex due to the upside down construction, and I was honestly super impressed. I never felt any sort of negative deflection, any sort of flex in, a hard compression or rough sections. Both the fork and the shock to me felt like they had great support. Probably, I think mostly about the Dorado itself. It was nice and supple off the top, a nice smooth feel. It really mitigated feedback through my hands, and then on harsher compressions, it had good support. I never noticed any harsh bottom outs or anything like that. When I was riding more flowy bike park trails on the Jedi, I didn't have any problem maintaining speed or generating speed out of trail features. Even though the bike grows as you compress through the travel, I enjoyed being able to pump over rollers and pump corners and feel the bike kind of press nicely back at me, help me kind of carry speed and generate speed. I would say that's a great bike for a pretty large group of people that want to pick up a new downhill bike. It is very capable in rough terrain. In a race setting, I think it would fare super well. I think if you're somebody who lives near a bike park and you just want to be banging out a bunch of laps all summer long, that bike is going to be super fun on flowy stuff. And it really just wants to be ridden hard. I would say out of all the bikes we rode, it seemed the most bulletproof. It didn't rattle loose. It just kind of kept charging on. So I think for, buying a bike that has a lot of heritage, it has a very, kind of hardcore downhill look. It's going to be a pretty sick downhill bike for really whatever you take it on.
Being on the DH scene for a long time, Canfield's always been a name, both downhill racing and freeriding. Freeriding, I mean, one of the brothers was a freerider at the original Red Bull Rampage, and then racing in Colorado, New Mexico, you always saw him on the circuit. So I was pretty excited to ride the Jedi, especially in its newest iteration as a 29er. Marketed as a race bike, and I think in general it meets that that marketing title. So that was the first bike I rode all week. and it was also the last bike I rode. So it was a pretty cool opportunity to have that initial impression and then kind of like settle up on my final thoughts about it. Initial impressions on the Canfield Jedi, I was surprised, really. I did 2 laps the first day on it, and it was, surprised is the best way I can summarize it. So looking at the bike, it does look industrial. It definitely looks longer. A lot of the component selection looks heavier. But riding it on trail, especially with some of the the blue kind of intermediate trails that we started on, it was more maneuverable, more poppy than I thought it would be, and I think that's due to the short chain stays that it actually has on paper. It is a rearward axle path, so it grows, but that only made it more stable on high speeds. Although the Canfield Jedi was maneuverable and more, I guess, poppy than you would think just by looking at it, its strength is definitely mashing, bashing, whatever you want to call it, plowing rocks. Very, very stable. It can hold a line in a rock garden, I think, better than all the other bikes that we tested. A lot of our testers talked about the initial impressions on the Dorado, and maybe it got a bad rap for the previous iterations as being flexy, but I didn't feel any of that. Definitely not lateral. Maybe a little bit when you were landing off of a big jump or kind of twisting it in rock gardens. There was a little bit of torsional flex, but not too much. Weaknesses in the Canfield Jedi: the bike definitely had the heaviest feeling, just kind of in general with riding. Even though that might be considered a good thing, bashing rocks, I think generally in modern downhill bikes, we want something that's a good compromise between just straight smashing rocks and being able to pick up and place the bike where you want it and when you want it. And having the opportunity to ride it at the beginning and the end of the test session, by today, which is the last day when I was very worn out from 4 straight days of downhill riding, that proved to be a big downside to that bike because I was very tired and I could not get that bike to do what I wanted it to do like I did at the beginning of the test session. So the component specs on the Canfield, I think overall, a solid component set. A lot of our testers mentioned that they're not like the typical component spec for a downhill bike or for a modern downhill bike. What stood out to me was that after 4 days of hard riding by different types of riders, the wheels were in really good shape. The E13 LG1s held up admirably. Really, we didn't have to adjust the spoke tension or anything. The TRP brakes for me were great. I, like Willem, am a Shimano guy, so they had really close to Shimano feeling. They don't have servo wave brake levers, but they had that same like very strong, very confident lever throw, and I felt like they were positioned really well. Unfortunately, the drivetrain was one thing that we noticed right away that was subpar, like compared to the other bikes. The other bikes had a pretty good mix of either EXO or GX SRAM shifters and derailleurs. The TRP shifter and derailleur were just honestly like much below that level. We had a lot of issues with the cable slippage. The shifter was very hard to push through the forward paddle and the rear paddle. So overall, that diminished the experience on that bike. So the bottom line with the Canfield Jedi 29, it is a race bike. I agree with that description of that bike. It is a bomb-proof race bike that you can pretty much purchase, get a solid component spec on it, and you won't have to worry really too much about it for a full season, I would say. It holds its line in rock gardens, and it's lively enough and maneuverable enough to be able to still have fun in the bike parks with.
For a more in-depth analysis of Canfield's Jedi 29, please head to vitalmtb.com for the complete review. To check out our entire downhill bike test session, click the link at the end of this video. And make sure to add Mountain Creek to your list of must-visit bike parks. You won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching.